Moving averages are a crucial tool when it comes to charting. They help us see trend, they help us see momentum, and most importantly, they help us see when those things are starting to change. But the thing is, most of us use moving averages in a really boring way. They're just simple lines on a screen. Maybe a couple different colors, but that's it. So today we're spicing things up. I'm going to show you 4 charts straight out of my own account, straight out of my own process that take those moving averages, style them in a couple of creative ways, and help you get more out of those crucial technical tools. It's all new. It's all here. It's Stockcharts in Focus. All right, everyone, welcome to the show, Stockcharts in Focus. I am your host. My name is Grayson Rose, author of Trading for Dummies and Director of Operations here at Stockcharts.com. So excited to sit down with you today and show you some spicy charts, some moving average charts, specifically looking at those key technical tools, one of the classic out of our toolkit, those moving averages. But we're going to make them more useful, more interesting. We are going to enhance your view of the markets using moving averages. We're going to do this by styling them in a couple of different ways. We're going to mess with opacities. We're going to mess with style of those lines, solid thick lines, dashed lines, different things like that. And the ultimate goal is to help you get more out of those moving averages. A lot of people use those moving averages on their charts, but they just put them up there in the classic way. A couple of lines, maybe with a couple of different colors, but that's sort of it. I've got 4 charts out of my own account, out of my own process. These are things that I use in my approach to the markets, and I'm going to show you exactly how, exactly why, talk through how to set these up, and we're even going to give you some links to these charts down in the description below. So lots to cover today. You're going to leave with some great ideas, and you're going to leave with some charts that you can bring into your own account. Now, speaking of account, if you're looking at the tools that we're going over today and you're thinking, wow, those are pretty cool, I could definitely benefit from those as a trader, as an investor, as a chartist, sign up for a Stockcharts account. This is the perfect time to join. And if you are joining for the very first time, you can use the code CHARTON, all one word, to get 10% off your first order. So sign up for a free 1-month trial. You can test out these different tools. And if you do want to join as a premium member, get access to all of the powerful things that we have on the Stockcharts platform, you can get 10% off your first sign up. Again, code is CHARTON. So with that out of the way, let's jump over to the site and get it going. All right, guys, so like I said, 4 charts that we are going to go over today, and these are going to be straight out of my own account. You're actually going to see me pull these up out of the Chart Styles menu. Those are our little way to save chart templates on Stockcharts. So the first one, something that we've actually showcased quite a lot on the show. This is my default chart. This is the type of thing that I look at anytime I pull up a new symbol. Now, you can see that I've got a relative strength line up at the very top. That's going to measure whatever security I'm looking at relative to the total market. I like to use VTI for that. And then down below, I've got volume bars, and I've got candlesticks, and I've got a couple of moving averages. This is a pretty simple chart. I do have a process for kind of layering in additional indicators. We've touched on that on the show in the past. I've got these different levels, as I call them, that allow me to actually bring in different sets of indicators. But if I flip, for instance, all the way up to my level 4 chart, since we're looking at SPY, these are going to be blank. But if we flip up to that level 4 chart where I have a ton of different indicators, you're going to see that the middle of the chart, the price area, is actually the same. We've got those exact same moving averages, colored in a couple of specific ways. So let's get back to that default, and I want to walk through exactly why I've set this up the way that I have. Now on my chart, I've got 4 moving averages. I've got the 20-day exponential moving average. The exponential moving average helps it move just a little bit quicker. It means that the most recent data is weighted a little more heavily than the data at the end of that period. So I've got the exponential 20-day moving average. Then I've got the simple 50, I've got the simple 100-day moving average, and I've got the simple 200-day moving average. You can see those. Blue, red, orange, green. That is going to be the order of those moving averages. Now, those are the 4 that I like to use on my chart. But within that, The 50 is a little bit more important to me, and the 200, a classic moving average, is very, very important to me. So I want those moving averages to really stand out. If you've got a couple, the classic mix is the 20, the 50, and the 200. Maybe one of those sticks out to you as a much more important moving average. Maybe for the time frame that you're trading, the 50-day is really the most important of that set. Whatever it is for you, you can take that approach and learn some lessons from what we're going to talk about on this chart. For me, again, with those 4 moving averages that I have, the most important two are the 50 and the 200, the red line and the green line. When I see price breaking below any of those, either of those moving averages, I know that I really want to be paying attention. Now, I've got the 20 on my charts because I do like to have that very short-term tactical moving average, and I've got the 100 because it's a nice split between the 50 and the 200. So I do want to have those other moving averages on my chart, but to be honest, they're not nearly as important to me as the 50 and the 200. So what I've actually done, as you can see, is I've colored these moving averages a little bit differently, and I've styled them a little bit differently. I've got the 20 on there, and I've got the 100 on there, but I've actually faded those out a little bit, and I've made them thin dashed lines. So visually, they're not as dominating. I want the 50 and the 200 to really stand out to me when I look at this chart, and so I've actually kind of weighted those a little more heavily visually by making them solid, thick lines. You can see that that red line and that green line are much more visually dominant than the blue and the orange lines. This just helps me stay true to my process. When I'm looking at this chart, I see the 50 and the 200 before I see that the 20 and the 100 day. Now, again, you can customize this to be whatever moving averages make sense to you. If you've got shorter term moving averages, if you've got longer term moving averages, maybe you're even looking at weekly charts and you've got a different set of moving averages. The point is, if there is a moving average or a couple of moving averages that are more important to you, visually prioritize those on your chart. Let's take a look at exactly how to do that. Down here in the chart settings area, you can see that I've set up those moving averages here, the EMA, the 20-day EMA, the 50, 100, and 200-day SMA. But then I've come over to the style area and I've started to customize these. So you can see these are in order from the top down. For the 20-day, I've set this up with the dashed thin line. I've also given it an opacity of 0.5 so that it's actually a little bit more faded out. The reasoning behind that is that when I look at this chart, the thing that I want to see first, even ahead of these moving averages, is the price bars. I want to make sure that the price bars are really popping off on this chart. So I've got those price bars at an opacity of 100%. They are going to be as visually dominant as they can. And for all of these moving averages, actually, I've faded them out just a little bit, given them an opacity, a transparency layer, basically, of 0.5. So they're going to be a little bit transparent. Now for the 50, I've got that set with a solid thick line. So that's going to stand out a little bit more, be a little bit more visually dominant on this chart. For the 100, I've got that set with that dashed thin line. And for the 200, I've got that set with that solid thick line. So this is exactly how I've set this up. If I wanted them to stand out even a little bit more, I could go in and mess with these opacities. Let's say I want the 50 and the 200 to really stand out off this chart, really pop. I can set that opacity to 1.0, and you can see now they're not faded out at all. Those red and green lines are really going to stand out on this chart. So again, a great way to sort of visually prioritize the moving averages that matter most to you. Maybe you want to use the opacity layers. Maybe you want to use some of those style options. You could have a solid thick line, a regular thick line, and then a thin line. You could use the dash. You can do a whole bunch of different things with this style setting. So combination of color, style, and opacity helps you prioritize those moving averages that matter most to you. Chart number 2 is going to be what I call my moving average focus chart. Now, speaking of opacity, speaking of visually prioritizing things, you can see I'm pulling up the chart styles menu right here. This is a chart template that I have saved into my own account. This is one that I use especially for indexes. When I'm thinking about something like SPY, that's why we've got that up on the screen today. This moving average focus chart helps me stay true to my system when I'm going through the different indexes. I like to use this for things like SPY and QQQ and IWM, some of those major indexes that I'm trying to really kind of dive into and understand the direction direction of trend over multiple time frames. So what I've done on this chart is kind of flipped the script. I talked about the price bars really standing out first and foremost on that first chart that we took a look at. And I said that I've kind of faded out the moving averages a little bit so that they are sort of the second visual priority. Here on this moving average focus chart, I'm doing the exact opposite. I'm prioritizing visually the moving averages. Now let's step back for a second and talk about why I'm doing that. I mentioned that I've got the 50 and the 200 as kind of my most important moving averages. For me, for the time frame that I like to trade, that I like to invest over, the 50 and the 200 really represent an intermediate term moving average and a longer term moving average. So I want to stay true to the direction of those trends. I want to really, when I'm kind of analyzing the markets, analyzing something like the S&P 500, I want to really understand the direction of the intermediate term trend and the long term trend using these moving averages. And I don't want my view to get cluttered up with other things. So by focusing on those moving averages, I'm able to sort of force myself to say, yep, you know what? It's really obvious on this chart. The direction of the intermediate term trend is up. The direction of the long-term trend is up as well. You can see that on this chart. So again, this one just helps me kind of visually prioritize different things on the chart depending on the situation that I am looking at. Again, I love to use this for indexes. So here we're looking at the S&P 500. We've got 3 moving averages on this chart, but you can see that 2 of them are heavily dominant visually. Again, that 50 and that 200, that intermediate term trend and that longer term trend. By fading out the price bars and by putting those moving averages at a 1.0 opacity so they really jump off this screen with a solid thick line, I can quickly look at this chart, and while I can still see the price bars behind and see where the S&P 500 is actually trading at relative to some of those moving averages, the first thing that I see when I look at this chart are those moving averages. So as I'm flipping through kind of my weekly process, I've got this type of chart in some of my chart lists that are dedicated to reviewing the indexes, reviewing the markets, kind of studying things from the top down. This is a great chart to flip over to and say, okay, I know that these 2 moving averages represent these 2 trend time frames for me, so I'm going to stay focused on those. So let's take another look at the settings area, show you exactly how to set this up. Very similar chart. Again, we got the 50 and the 200. I do also have the 100 on here just to kind of have that one pinned between, but you can see that that is a thin dashed line and it's got that same opacity of 0.05. For the 2 that matter, the 2 moving averages that we're going to want to focus on, you can see that I've got solid thick lines here. And again, I've set that opacity to 1.0. The one other thing that I've done to set up this chart is I've changed the opacity of the price bars themselves. So you can see that those price bars on this chart are very faded out. To do that, here under the chart attributes area, I can change the opacity to 0.1. That is almost as low as it can go. The next step down is 0, where they're just going to be completely removed from the chart. So 0.1 is going to be really faded out on those price bars. Now you can also access some of these things, by the way, up top. So you can see that opacity setting for the price bars, you can use this quick menu right up at the top of the chart. Love to point that out to people, something that we've added with our new SharpCharts Workbench. You can mess with some of those settings using that menu up top. So that is chart number 2, our moving average focus chart. This is a great way, again, to focus on those moving averages and what they represent. If you've got a specific index or a specific security that you're trying to really, keep yourself focused on, study, that kind of thing, this is a great chart to pull up. Again, I have this in a chart list that's dedicated to market analysis. So this is one of those charts that comes up for me every weekend. I like to look at this and just say, okay, yep, I know that I've been looking at the S&P 500 all week, but let's step back, let's focus on those intermediate term and long-term moving averages and see what the direction of them is. So nice little visual trick here. Chart number 3 is going to be a moving average ribbon chart. This is one that I love to look at, again, for some of that sort of longer term market analysis, some of that kind of strategy. Also works really well for individual security analysis, though. If you've got stocks that you're studying, you're trying to study the direction of trend, see when trend is changing, see when momentum might be rolling over, different concepts like that. This is a fantastic chart to use. So what we've done, we're going to study the settings here for a second right before we jump into the chart itself. We've added a whole bunch of moving averages. You can see that I've added a ton of these things, but from a 10-day moving average all the way up to a 250-day moving average. I have maxed out the number of overlays that are allowed on this chart, and I've done that in increments of 10. So 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, and so on and so forth. Now, I've just let the style menus here be set to auto so that the workbench is going to kind of do the coloring for me. And I haven't messed with the color, I haven't messed with the opacity, none of that stuff. I've just added all of these different moving averages. By the way, we are going to have links to this chart in the description below, and at the end, I'm going to actually show you how you can get it right from the workbench itself. So don't worry, you don't have to go set this up yourself, but I do want to make sure that you see exactly how these charts are created. What you end up with is a moving average ribbon chart. This is a beautiful way to visualize trend. You can see when that moving average ribbon condenses, when it compresses, you're kind of getting a sideways chop. You're seeing those moving averages all just kind of move sideways together, and we get really, really bunched up. When you see a trend start to just fly higher and you see a strong trend, what you're going to see is that moving average ribbon opens up, it expands, and it turns into just kind of this beautiful flow of those different moving averages over those different time frames. We can see that clearly with SPY. So we had a very, very compressed moving average ribbon kind of at the start of 2023, obviously coming out of the weakness we had in 2022. And as we emerged into that beautiful uptrend here in SPY, you can see that ribbon really opened up and started just flowing higher. Now we have the same thing. You know, we saw a little bit of compression there at the end of 2023, some of the weakness that we had, but coming out of that, again, that moving average ribbon opens up and we can see it just kind of flowing with that beautiful colored line. So this is a great way to, again, visualize trend, visualize some of that momentum, and use those moving averages in a bit of a more creative way. You don't need to have just one or two. This is a great way to see those moving averages moving together, make sure that the trend is all healthy and moving in the right direction. Moving average ribbon's a very, very cool way to see the market. So that is our third chart, our third fascinating way to use moving averages in a more enhanced, more creative kind of fashion. Our fourth chart of the day. Again, we're going to give you links to all of these. This is going to be what I call my 5 versus 200 chart. I actually got this idea from Arthur Hill a long time ago, one of our longtime contributors. Love this perspective. Arthur's point was, hey, you know, if you're getting whipsawed in and out of the markets a little bit too much, put on a 5-day moving average, hide those price bars, and just compare the 5-day moving average to the 200-day moving average. You end up with a lot fewer whipsaws. This is a great way to see moving averages, though. So what this chart is doing, it takes that security. Again, in that settings menu, you can see that we've got the chart type actually set to invisible, which is going to be down here, actually, at the bottom. You can see we've got the chart type set to invisible. The other way to do that would actually be to mess with the opacity and set this down to 0. So two kind of different ways to do that. But we do actually in SharpCharts have an invisible chart type that's just going to hide the price bars completely. So I'm using that invisible chart type on this chart. And then I've added a simple 5-day moving average and a simple 200-day moving average. What we've then done is we've set the 5-day to be that solid thick line, kind of a standard view. Opacity is normal. We've got a blue color on there. But for the 200, we've actually set this up as an area chart. This is one of those other style options that you have for those moving averages that can be very, very useful. So we've set that 200-day up as an area chart, and we've given an opacity of 0.5 so that we can kind of see through it. If we don't do that, as you can see, it's going to be a little bit thick, a little bit hard to actually see what's going on in this chart. So I've set the opacity down to 0.5. Now, as a result of that, we can very clearly see when the 5-day is crossing into the 200. Of course, these are things that you can see if you just have these moving averages set up as a line, but by setting it up as an area, it's so clear to see exactly when you cross into or below that 200-day moving average. So this is a great chart to use for your market analysis, a great way to visualize what's going on for something like SPY, but it can also be a great trick to use for any of your stocks that you're following. Let's say we were looking at something like Microsoft. We'll pull up a chart of Microsoft, and we're going to get rid actually of that 5-day moving average. Now we've got that simple chart, but again, remember our chart is set to invisible, so those price bars are going to be hidden. If we turn this on with, let's do OHLC bars, you can really clearly see when that chart crosses below that moving average. If we change this from a 10-year chart to something like more of a, let's do 1 year, Well, Microsoft hasn't closed below its 200-day in more than 1 year. So let's do a 2-year chart. You can see Microsoft there. When it's below that 200-day moving average, it's incredibly, incredibly clear because of that kind of area style on this moving average. So this can be a really, really interesting visual trick to use to actually, see those moving averages in a different kind of way. There's a famous quote from a lot of different people, but especially Paul Tudor Jones loves to say, "Nothing good happens below the 200-day moving average." If you believe that, or if you've got your own moving average number that you want to really stay focused on and make sure you're not in anything that's below that moving average, this is a great trick, a great way to see it. Set your moving average up with an area style, and it's going to be very obvious when you cross into that area. You basically just have to say, hey, if the price bars are in that colored block, I'm getting out. It's a great way to keep yourself honest. So that's our fourth and final chart. Again, this one is a little bit of a flex chart here. That 5 versus 200 can be a great way to study the markets and see what's going on. A little bit of a longer term perspective. But this area trick for your moving averages can also be a great one to use for any of your tools. So let's say, we'll do this actually here with this chart. Let's say we've got Microsoft here. We're going to do a 1-year chart. And we'll actually do this on our default. We're going to turn that 50-day moving average into an area style. This is another great representation of this. You can take a standard chart out of your own account, kind of the way that you're typically using those moving averages, and try setting up one of those moving averages with an area style. It's a great way to see exactly when you are above or below that key moving average that you want to follow. Makes it really, really obvious on the chart. Also makes it really obvious when we bounce off of those moving averages. So this is a great example actually here with Microsoft, bouncing off of the 50, bouncing off of the 50, bouncing off of the 50, but when it crosses below and into that area, you can really, really see it very, very clearly. It's a great way to really define those moving averages, the space above or the space below. So that is our show for today. Again, we looked at 4 different ways to spice up your moving averages, bring a little bit more style into your charts, but most importantly, bring a more clear perspective to your moving average analysis. All of these different tricks can be done on SharpCharts. They can also be done in ACP. That's our interactive advanced charting platform. Take these lessons with you. Take some of these creative ways to spin those moving averages, make them a little bit more visually dominating, make them a little bit more faded out, prioritize those different things on your chart, set the area style so you can really clearly see whenever you dip below one of those moving averages. So many different tricks that you can use here using these moving averages. The one last thing that I do want to show you, though, we're actually going to jump back over to the site. We are going to take a look at exactly how to pull up these charts on the workbench. That was the final thing that I wanted to share with you. So down here on our SharpCharts Workbench, underneath the chart settings area, we've got our chart style library. Now, if you click into that tab, you're going to see a whole bunch of different groups in here. We've got popular chart styles, strategies, timeframes, market analysis, lots and lots of different things. This is a growing list. We are constantly adding to the sample charts that are built right into the workbench here. But for those 4 charts that we looked at today, you can actually access all of those right down here without having to create anything for yourself or mess with any settings. So really quickly, we'll take a look at how to access those. Under Experts, if you liked my default chart that we took a look at, well, we've got that right here under Grayson Rose. Give that a click. It's going to load that style right there on the workbench for you. If you liked that second chart that we looked at, you can access that, the moving average focus chart, under popular chart styles. Give that a click. It's going to pull in that moving average focus style right there for you. You don't have to go creating that. I mentioned the moving average ribbon. That was another one that we took a look at. One that is a little bit more tricky to create. So if you click the moving average ribbon under popular chart styles, that is another one that you can actually just start using. You don't have to go create for yourself. And finally, under market analysis, we've got that 5 versus 200. So if you like that style, you like that idea, you can pull that one up under market analysis. Now, the great thing about all of these different sample styles that we have is that you can use this as is, start to use this just like we have it here. Or you can start to customize these charts. If you jump back over to the chart settings area, you can now mess with this, save your chart template, save this chart right to your own account. You can do a ton with this. They are real charts that you can just start using. So a great way to discover some different things that you might want to explore and experiment with, and a great way to kind of supercharge your stock charts process. Get up and running with the site and these tools very, very easily. If you want to save this as a style, you can save that with the big green button down here. If you want to save it to your account, you can save that chart with the green button up at the top. You got a lot of different options. If you're familiar with those tools on Stockcharts, saving chart styles, those chart templates, and saving different charts to your lists, remember that anything in this chart style library you can start using and bringing into your own process really, really easily. So that is going to do it for us finally here on the show. Thank you so much for joining me on Stock Charts in Focus. Hopefully you had some fun exploring some different ways to use those moving averages. Again, a crucial tool for so many of us as chartists, but we can make them a little bit more impactful, a little more visually interesting, and use those moving averages in some creative ways to help us gain a better perspective on the market. So again, remember, access those from the chart style library. It makes it really, really easy to get started with these tools. Again, if you're looking at any of this stuff and saying, hey, I could bring that into my process, that would really help me out, sign up for a Stockcharts premium membership. You'll be able to save these templates, access more of these tools, save charts to your own account, create watch lists and portfolio lists. So many amazing tools out there on the Stockcharts platform. If you do want to sign up, you can do that on the Stockcharts homepage. Join for a free 1-month trial, and once you sign up, you can also use code CHARTON to get 10% off your first order. So remember that when you do sign up. Again, my name is Grayson Rose, author of Trading for Dummies and Director of Operations here at Stockcharts.com. It's been great to be with you. I'll see you again soon for another episode of Stock Charts in Focus. But until then, chart on, my friends.